Does keeping your cat indoors keep them safe? Or does it just keep them safe from one thing while quietly costing them another? You lock the door because you love them. No cars, no coyotes, no fights, no fleas, no disease. And it works. Indoor cats live longer, sometimes years longer than cats who go outside. That part is real, and it matters. And nothing in this video is going to tell you to throw the door open and let them wander. But here's what almost nobody tells new owners. Longer isn't the same as better. There's a slow, invisible cost to that locked door. One that doesn't show up as an emergency. One no vet visit will catch until it's already reshaped your cat's whole life. It shows up as a habit, a weight gain you convince yourself is nothing, a behavior you've quietly started calling just how they are, a stillness you've mistaken for peace. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you the one 15-minute habit that undoes almost all of it, something most indoor cat owners have never even heard of, and it isn't a bigger house or a trip outside. Keep that in mind, because it changes everything. But first, let's talk about the first thing that changes the moment a cat becomes an indoor cat, the size of their entire world. One, the world that shrank from acres to a hallway. Ever watch your cat sit at the window for 20 minutes, perfectly still, just staring? You probably thought that was relaxing for them. What if I told you that stillness is doing something closer to the opposite? Here's the part most owners never think about. A cat allowed outside, even a cat that just wanders their own neighborhood, doesn't stay in the yard. Researchers who tracked owned cats with GPS collars found their average roaming range was just under 5 acres. Not the sprawling territory a feral cat might claim, sometimes hundreds of acres, but still enough space to patrol, to check, to own, every single day of their life. Now think about the average home. A typical apartment or house is a rounding error next to 5 acres. Your cat didn't just lose a yard, they lost almost their entire concept of territory, the very thing their brain is built to track, defend, and patrol from the moment they wake up. Here's why that matters more than it sounds like it should. A cat's sense of safety isn't just about being fed and warm, it's about knowing their space, every inch of it, and knowing exactly where they stand in it. When that space collapses down to a few rooms, the instinct to patrol doesn't switch off. It just runs out of places to go, and a mind built for 5 acres doesn't know what to do with 500 square feet. That's often where the pacing at 3 a.m. comes from, the sudden mad dash down the hallway for no visible reason. The scratching on furniture that isn't about claws at all, it's about marking a shrunken territory the only way they still can. It's not always energy, and it's not always naughtiness. Sometimes it's a territory instinct with nowhere left to spend itself, showing up as a behavior you've been trying to correct instead of understand. So here's the fix, and it costs you almost nothing. Stop thinking about your cat's world in square feet. Start thinking about it in layers. Cats don't need more floor space nearly as much as they need more usable space, and the fastest way to create that is to go vertical. A cat tree by the window, a shelf running along the top of a bookcase, clear space on top of the fridge, or a wardrobe that they're allowed to claim as theirs. Every new level you add isn't decoration, it's territory. You're not making your home look nicer for a cat, you're handing them back a piece of the world you took away when you closed the door, and their whole nervous system feels the difference the very first time they climb up and look down at their whole domain from above. 2, the weight they gain, without you noticing a thing. Have you ever picked your cat up and thought just for a second that they felt heavier than they used to? Then told yourself it was probably nothing because they still play, still eat, still seem fine? Here's the twist. It's very rarely nothing. Cats gain weight so gradually that owners almost never catch it happening in real time. You see your cat every single day, so the change is invisible to you in a way it wouldn't be to a stranger meeting them for the first time. And indoor cats are the ones most at risk. Veterinary surveys have found that around 6 in 10 cats in the United States are now overweight or obese, and indoor-only cats sit right at the center of that number, more at risk than cats who split their time outside. The reason isn't a mystery. Outdoors, a cat's body is built to move constantly in short, explosive bursts, stalking, sprinting, climbing, defending territory. Indoors, that same body gets a bowl that refills itself on a schedule and a couch that never runs out of room. Here's the part that should actually worry you. Extra weight on a cat isn't cosmetic the way it might look on a person. It's one of the biggest drivers of diabetes, joint disease, and a shorter, harder, final few years of life. The very thing you kept them inside to prevent in the first place, an early death, can quietly creep back in through the food bowl instead of through the front door, just slower and easier to miss until a vet says the word obese out loud for the first time. So here's your daily habit, and it takes less time than scrolling your phone for one video. Split your cat's meals into 2 or 3 small hunts instead of one flat bowl sitting out all day. Toss a few pieces of kibble down the hallway and let them chase it. Use a puzzle feeder that makes them work a little for each bite instead of grazing on autopilot. It sounds small. It isn't. You're not just managing a number on a scale. you're giving their body back the kind of work it was built to do, and giving them years back at the other end of their life that a full bowl in an empty afternoon would have quietly taken away without either of you noticing. 3. The hunt that never gets to finish. Ever notice your cat going a little wild in the evening, chasing nothing, attacking a sock, sprinting across the room for no reason you can see? It's not craziness. It's not even really extra energy. It's a hunt that never got the chance to end. Here's the truth almost no one hears. Every cat, no matter how spoiled, how sleepy, or how many years they've spent on a couch, is wired for one full sequence: stalk, chase, pounce, catch. That sequence is burned into their nervous system by evolution, not by choice, and it doesn't care whether your cat has ever set a paw on grass in their entire life. Outdoors, that sequence closes. A cat stalks a bird or a bug, and whether or not the hunt actually succeeds, it resolves. It ends. Indoors, most play stops at the pounce. You wave the wand toy. Your cat swats at it a few times, you get bored and put it away to go make dinner. The hunt starts and never finishes. And behavior researchers who study captive and companion animals have found that an unfinished predatory sequence doesn't just fade quietly into nothing. It builds, and it tends to come out somewhere else entirely, as overgrooming, as sudden aggression toward your ankles on the stairs, as a kind of restless tension that looks a lot like a cat who's simply too much for no reason you can point to. There's a second version of the same problem sitting in your living room right now, and you probably didn't clock it as a problem at all. The window. Watching a bird land on the fence outside is stimulating in exactly the way that starts a hunt, and completely useless in the one way that matters, because your cat can never actually finish it. Behaviorists call this barrier frustration, and it's one of the most common hidden stressors in indoor cats, hiding in plain sight as your cat's favorite hobby. So here's the fix, and the key word is finish. When you play with a wand toy, don't just wave it around in the air. Drag it low and slow like something actually wounded. Let your cat stalk it properly from a distance. Let the chase build. And then, at the very end, let them win. Let their paws close around it for real. Not pulling it away at the last second because it's cute. Follow it with a small treat right after, so the sequence ends the way nature intended, with a catch and a meal instead of an interruption. You're not just tiring your cat out before bed. You're closing a loop their whole body has been waiting all day to close. And every time you let them win, you're handing them the one feeling their instincts crave more than almost anything else you could offer. 4. The world that stopped changing. Here's a question worth sitting with. When was the last time something genuinely new happened in your cat's day? Not a new toy, not a new treat flavor. Something actually new to smell, hear, feel, or investigate. For a lot of indoor cats, the honest answer is a very long time ago. The same rooms, the same furniture, the same 3 smells over and over, day after day, year after year. Here's why that quietly matters more than it sounds like it should. In the wild, or even just wandering a yard, a cat's senses are constantly being fed new information, a different scent on the wind, a new sound from somewhere they can't see, a texture underfoot that changes with the weather. That sensory novelty isn't a luxury, it's a form of mental exercise every bit as real as physical exercise, and it's one of the first things that disappears completely the day a cat becomes fully indoor. Researchers who study environmental enrichment in captive animals, everything from zoo cats to lab cats to house cats, keep finding the same pattern. A predictable, unchanging environment doesn't just bore an animal, it can measurably dull their responsiveness over time, making them slower to engage, slower to react, more prone to the flat, checked-out state that looks so easy to mistake for a calm personality. So here's the fix, and it's cheap in every sense of the word. Rotate a small bag of outside into your cat's world. A pine cone brought in from the yard, a paper bag that smells like the grocery store, a cardboard box from a different room. Once a week, let your cat sniff, investigate, and inspect something that wasn't there yesterday. You can even bring a houseplant safe branch or a bit of untreated grass in from outside for them to smell and paw at. It takes 90 seconds of your time. For your cat, it's the closest thing you can hand them to the wind-changing direction, and their brain notices the difference even if you never see it happen. And hey, if this is already changing how you think about your own cat's day, hit like and subscribe, so this reaches more owners whose cats are quietly asking for this and have no way to say so. 5. The boredom that looks exactly like calm. Here's an uncomfortable question. What if your chill cat isn't actually chill? We love to describe indoor cats as relaxed, low-key, easygoing. But ask any vet behaviorist and they'll tell you something that should stop you in your tracks. A cat that sleeps 18 hours a day and shows almost no reaction to anything isn't necessarily content. Sometimes that's exactly what understimulation looks like from the outside. Quiet, still. Easy to miss because it never announces itself. Here's why it's so easy to miss. Cats don't show stress the way dogs do. There's no whining, no pacing at the door, no obvious drama most of the time. Instead, an understimulated indoor cat tends to go one of two ways. Either the behavior turns inward, excessive grooming until bald patches start to appear, sitting in the exact same spot for hours at a time, a general flatness that owners eventually stopped noticing because it slowly became the baseline, or it turns outward in short, sharp bursts, an unprovoked swat, a bite that seems to come from nowhere, a level of irritability that gets blamed on the cat's personality instead of on an environment that never asks anything of them. Veterinary researchers who focus specifically on indoor cat welfare, including a well-known indoor pet program out of Ohio State University's College of Veterinary Medicine, have spent years documenting exactly this pattern. Their conclusion keeps landing in the same place. Understimulation, not a lack of love, is one of the single biggest hidden welfare problems in cats who never go outside. These aren't cats who are unloved. They're cats who are under-challenged, and the two get confused constantly by owners who are doing everything they know how to do. So here's the daily habit, and it's less about buying more toys and more about breaking routine on purpose. Cats don't get bored of hunting. They get bored of predictability. Once a day, change something small. Move the food puzzle to a new spot on the counter. Hide 2 or 3 treats around a room instead of dropping them straight into a bowl. Rotate which toys are out so nothing goes stale from overexposure. The goal isn't more stuff sitting in a basket. It's more decisions for your cat to make, more small problems for their brain to actually solve. That kind of daily unpredictability does something a pile of toys never will on its own. It gives your cat a reason to actually use their mind. And a cat whose mind is being used is a cat who's far less likely to turn that same sharp attention on themselves or on you. 6, the space they're quietly forced to share. If you have more than one cat, here's a question worth sitting with. Do your cats actually choose to be near each other, or have they just run out of room to get away? Outdoors, cats who don't get along simply avoid each other. There's enough space for 2 cats to live near the same house and barely cross paths for weeks at a time. Indoors, that option disappears completely. 2 cats who would have quietly kept their distance in the wild are now sharing a kitchen, a hallway, and worst of all, often the exact same litter box and the exact same food bowl. Here's the part that surprises most owners. Cats are far less socially flexible than we like to believe, and far less like small dogs than most households treat them. They don't form easy group households the same way dogs often do. What looks like 2 cats living together fine from your spot on the couch is frequently underneath a slow-motion negotiation over resources, with one cat quietly losing that negotiation a little more every single day. The signs are almost never a fight you actually witness happening. It's one cat who started eating a little less than they used to, a cat who stopped using the litter box reliably, not out of spite or a behavior problem, but because using it means walking past a cat they're genuinely wary of every single time. Feline behavior researchers have a simple standard for this that almost no multi-cat household actually follows. 1 litter box per cat plus 1 extra, placed in different locations around the home, not lined up next to each other like stalls in a public restroom. Multiple feeding stations, spaced apart, so no cat has to eat while being watched by another. So here's the fix, and it's really a fix about geography more than behavior. Give every cat in your home their own resources, spread out, each with a clear escape route so nobody has to choose between using the litter box and walking past a cat that makes them nervous. Add a few more of those vertical spaces from the first habit, specifically, so a stressed cat has somewhere to climb up and out of another cat's path when they need it. You're not just avoiding fights you can see. You're giving every cat in your home the one thing 5 acres used to give them for free. The simple, quiet ability to just walk away. 7, the goodbye that got harder, not easier. Here's something that doesn't come up nearly as often as it should. Does your cat seem more anxious when you leave the house now than they did a few years ago? For a lot of indoor-only cats, especially the ones living in single-cat, single-person homes, the honest answer is yes, and it tends to get worse over time rather than better. Here's why. An outdoor cat, or even an indoor-outdoor cat, has other sources of stimulation and other things happening in their day that don't involve you at all. An indoor-only cat, especially one who's the only pet in the home, ends up with a world where you are essentially the entire source of interaction, activity, and stimulation, all day, every day. That's a lot to put on one relationship, and researchers who study attachment and separation-related problems in cats have found exactly what you'd expect from that setup. Cats who are the sole indoor pet in a household, with an owner who is the primary or only source of engagement, show separation-related behaviors, like excessive vocalizing, waiting by the door, urinating outside the box, or destructive scratching that only happens while you're gone, more often than cats with more varied environments or feline companionship. This isn't a case for getting a second cat, and it definitely isn't a case for feeling guilty every time you leave for work. It's a case for understanding what's actually happening. Your cat isn't being dramatic or spiteful when the anxiety shows up. They've simply run out of other things to orient their day around, so the whole day starts to orbit the sound of your keys. So here's the fix, and it's about building a life that doesn't collapse the second you walk out the door. A food puzzle that only comes out when you leave, so leaving starts to predict something good instead of something empty. Background sound, a fan, low music, something other than total silence. A window perch positioned towards something worth watching, birds, a tree, foot traffic, so there's a reason to look outward instead of only toward the door. You're not replacing yourself. You're making sure you're not the only structure holding your cat's entire day together, which, it turns out, is a kindness to both of you. 8, the longer life that comes with a heavier ask. Here's where everything from this video comes together. Remember that opening number? Indoor cats, living years longer than cats who go outside. That part was never the problem. The problem is what that longer life quietly asks of you in return. An outdoor cat gets a piece of their enrichment for free, from weather, from birds, from the neighborhood itself, from a world that keeps moving whether they're paying attention or not. An indoor cat gets almost none of that for free. Every ounce of stimulation, every hunt, every reason to move their body, every new thing to investigate, every reason the day feels different from yesterday has to come from you because you're the only version of the outside world they have left. That's not a small ask, and it's exactly why the 7 habits in this video exist. The vertical space that gives them territory back. The split meals and puzzle feeders that give their body work to do. The wand play that lets the hunt finally close. The rotating scents and objects that keep their senses from going flat. The daily small changes that keep their mind engaged instead of checked out. The separated resources that let every cat in a shared home actually choose their own space again. The structure that stops your absence from feeling like an empty room. None of those are chores, even though they might read like a list of them. Each one is a small physical translation of the world you took away when you decided, for very good and very loving reasons, to keep them safe behind a closed door. If your cat has ever chased a puzzle feeder across the kitchen floor, ambushed a wand toy like their life depended on it, or claimed a shelf you didn't even know they wanted, they're already telling you it's working. Give them these habits consistently, and the extra years you bought them by keeping that door closed stop being just extra years on a chart at the vet's office. They become years that actually feel like the life a cat was built for, lived entirely within 4 walls that finally act like an entire world instead of a smaller version of one.